Hi, everybody. I'm Chris Greco. Today on Lead with Love, we're going to talk about Matthew 15, loaves and fishes, and the sharing aspect of that. And then we're going to talk about some faux pas and fine print. Be a relatively short show for you today, but I think hopefully something that you'll enjoy and something that you'll like to be able to share, because sharing is all part of that. Right here on Lead with Love. So let's go ahead and get started. Everyone knows I'm Chris Greco. I'm going to be your host here for the next 15, maybe 20 minutes, talking about different aspects. But this is based on my book, Love is the Answer, LOVE, Learn, Offer, Value, and Educate. We want to learn something. We want to offer things to other people. We want to value other people, and we want to educate both ourselves and other people through sharing our knowledge, our experiences, whether it be writing, speaking, whatever it is. That's pretty important. So the first thing we're going to talk about today is we're going to talk about the idea behind sharing. Okay. And I think there's going to be some people that when I'm going to do this, this segment, there are going to be some people that are going to come back and they're going to say, Chris, you're using the Bible. Why do you keep using the Bible? Bible to me is a reference. That's number one. Use whatever you want. I mean, I'm just using this as a reference. But I think they're also going to come back, especially those that take the Bible very literally, are going to come back and say, no, that's not what the Bible says. Well, I'm going to tell you that the Bible has an interesting history from the standpoint that it came from the Greek, then it was in Hebrew, then it was in English. I mean, it went on and on and on and on. Now there's new versions and everything else. And the reason I say that is because a lot of people don't understand that classical Greek, has a very, very wide interpretation. For instance, when Jesus is talking to Saint Peter, and saying, Peter, do you love me? And Peter responds, yes, I love you. And Jesus says, tend my sheep. And then he keeps asking him if he loves him. Well, it turns out, and after talking to a friend of mine who took classical Greek, that love, there are so many versions of love in the Greek that Jesus was asking, and it came out one form of love, and Peter was responding with another word for love. They weren't getting there. That's why Jesus kept saying, do you love me? Do you love me? Do you love me? And so there's a lot of interpretation there from what you're talking about. So I'm going to give an interpretation here. It's my interpretation, but it has to do with sharing. It has to do with a sharing aspect. So so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use this one here, King James Bible online.org, and Matthew 15:36. And he took the 7 loaves and fishes, gave thanks, and brake them, and gave to his disciples, and the disciples to the multitude. Now, let me say something right here. The miracle here is that people always say he took those 5 loaves. He took the loaves and the fishes, 7 loaves and fishes, and that ended up to be some amazing amount of loaves and fishes for people. At the end, they actually gathered up pieces, right? And to me, I sit back and I go, okay, wait a minute. Let's take a look at this real quick. And they did all eat and were filled, and they took up the broken meat that was left 7 baskets full. So first of all, you have to understand a couple things at that time frame, and people will tell you, they will confirm this. People, when they came to hear Jesus speak, they just didn't come from local communities. They came from far away to hear him speak. They were not about to go on that journey without food and water. So I would say, and I can make this judgment because people make judgments, and this is called unfalsifiability. You can't prove me false on that, and I can't prove them false on it. But the bottom line is this: is that there were people there of different regions. Tyre and Sidon, different areas that hated each other, literally hated each other. Think about this for a second. Let's say I was going to have the Palestinians and the Jewish people come together and sit down and listen to a person speak. That's what we're talking about here. We're talking about a lot of hate, and they would sit together. They're sitting together. So what happened is that in my estimation and my interpretation of this reading is that people actually shared with one another the food and drink that they had to be able to share, to be able to hear Jesus speak, because Jesus just talked to them about that. He just talked to them about aspects, about sharing and making sure that that you care for one another. And this is what they're talking about. They applied what he told them, and even though he only had 7 loaves and fishes, he got them to share with one another. Ladies and gentlemen, that is a miracle. That is an absolute miracle. That's just as much a miracle as taking 7 loaves and fishes and somehow multiplying them. Because he did that. He did that through the love that he shared with those people, and they shared with one another. That's what happened here. That's my interpretation of what happened here. Now, people may say, "No, that's not correct, Chris. He made those loaves and fishes, and he multiplied them." Yes, he did, through the love that he put through people, and people shared with one another. He multiplied those loaves and fishes. They didn't keep it for themselves. They shared it with one another. And this is what he's talking about. And this is what he means from the standpoint of the multitude aspect. You know, uh, 7 and a few little fishes. That's it. And they did all eat and were filled. And they that did eat were 4,000 men beside women and children. And he sent away the multitude and took ship and came into the coasts of Magdala. So, I mean, 4,000 men besides women and children. So these were families, literal families that sat down and listened to Jesus and shared with one another. That's what I want to make sure we understand here. Okay. So that's what we have, and that's what we want to share. So basically, that's what I wanted to say here. And some people may say, "Oh, Chris, talking about the Bible, I'm done." I get that. I understand that. And if you shut me off, I get it. But I just wanted to share that with you, that because we share with one another. As we share with one another, we increase our investment in each other. I think that's pretty important. I mean, just me, but talking about that. All right, so we get to faux pas and fine print. So here's faux pas. So I just tuned in to France 24 on Sunday, and they had a guest on there who was talking about spending the amount of money that's spent from the United States. And he said that the United States spent $380 billion over 10 years, which is $3.8 billion per year, according to him. No, that's not right. It's not correct. That's not the math. I know math is hard, but that's not the correct math. So I took a look, and it says basically the United States gave, this is BBC now, $3.8 billion in aid to Israel, part of a long-term yearly commitment. Almost all of it was there. The support came as part of an agreement signed by former President Barack Obama, 2016. This is 2020. So 2020, interesting. The U.S. gave $3.8 billion in aid to Israel. This was under, yeah, that's right. It was under President Trump. Under President Trump. That's right. So support came as part of a package agreement. Overall package of $38 billion in military aid from the decades 2017 to 2028. Okay, $38 billion from President Barack Obama. Well, $38 billion means $3.8 billion, which bottom line is the individual had that correct $3.8 billion, but it isn't $380 billion. It's $38 billion. 38, much different than what we're talking about here. So that's a faux pas I wanted to point out, that it is not 380 billion over a decade. It's 38 billion over a decade. So that's very, very important, And this is basically what's happening. So 30 billion over a decade between 2009, 2018, 1999, 2008, to about 22 billion, and we're giving over a period of a decade here 38 billion. So 3.8 billion dollars every single year. Boom, 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 boom. 38 billion dollars. So that's how much it's increased. All right, so let's talk about the next thing is fine print. So this is the fine print on on this story. This is Prevagen. Now, Prevagen is a memory aid, but I wanted to just talk about these. Okay, now I want you to take a look at this fine print here. Testimonial list compensated for their time. This individual is paid for this. This individual is paid for this. I just want to make sure that you understand this. Always take a look at this, and also take a look to make sure that they're real individuals. Now, this is a real individual. I mean, from the standpoint of what they've done, I'm sure she takes this and everything else, but she's being paid for this. You're being paid for it. Right there, that's a little bit of a conflict of interest to me, but I get it. So that's it with that. And now I'm going to take this. Now, based on a clinical study of subgroups of individuals who were cognitively normal or mildly impaired. All right, so I thought, I want to see what they're talking about here. So I'm going to get out of this, and I'm going to go to National Library of Medicine. So Prevagen analysis of clinical evidence and its designation as #1 pharmacist recommended brand. All right, so here's a study that was done, and this talks about this. However, this study possesses significant limitations, and therefore one must question the merits of such clinical evidence. Okay? Prevagen's designation as #1 pharmacist recommended brand is based on a survey facilitated by Pharmacy Times, designed to identify the brand name over-the-counter products that pharmacists recommend most frequently. Now, because of the limited clinical data, it is likely that the survey results reflect pharmacists' familiarity with this product, which may be influenced by extensive advertising techniques, which means marketing works. Marketing does work. It's a situation where you talk about these situations, and all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I get it. Yeah, it's okay. I know this one. I know this one. It's like cough drops or anything else. It all depends on the marketing ploy that you have, and all of a sudden people go, oh, I want that one. I don't want some generic thing. I want that brand name. So that's what's going on with this memory stuff. But the problem, it says, as practitioners of evidence-based medicine, pharmacists should not recommend a product with limited evidence to support its use. Furthermore, pharmacists should proactively educate their patients, especially those who are most vulnerable, about the rational use of all pharmacologically active substances, including dietary supplements. So it's just, you have to look at this stuff, right? You have to look at it and make sure that it's the commercials are good. Don't get me wrong, they're good. If I wasn't a data guy, if I didn't take a look at this stuff, I'd be like, well, maybe it'd be worthwhile just getting it. Take a look at this stuff. Same with some of these other dietary stuff, the fruits and vegetable stuff and everything else. I don't know about this. I don't know about this because it hasn't really been studied. And even as I pointed out in the past, some of these studies are bad anyways. They're not that good. So that's what's happening here. So I mean, this is what we're talking about. I mean, pharmacy placement of non-prescription nicotine replacement, third class medication, sales purchasing behavior. This is Australia. I mean, there's a lot of different things that are going on in here. But it's a government website, but it's the National Library of Medicine, National Center for Biological Information at NIH, National Institutes of Health. So it's I would say a reputable type area that people need to take a look at. So anyways, that's the faux pas and fine prints that I wanted to point out to you today, as well as the sharing aspect, which is really, really important. So I think if you take a look at the sharing things that go along, and you take a look at these things and you say, okay, I'm gonna share, I think this makes a lot more sense in what you're doing, a lot more sense in how things go. So on that note, This is a shortened one of Lead with Love, but just wanted you to have those little bits of wisdom and boredom, and take them and move onward and have a great week. So take care. See ya.